Good morning. We are here with veteran educator, classically trained pianist and musician, and former NAASC Columbia, Maryland chapter president, Miss Edwina Hunter. So welcome.
Thank you.
It's 2020, and this is our 45th anniversary of the National Alumnae Association of Spelman College, Columbia, Maryland chapter. And we wanted to document some of our alum stories. Spelman College has such a rich history, and we wanted to share some of that in our chapter. So first we'll start off with, you grew up in North Carolina.
Yes.
And Spelman College is many miles from your hometown.
Yes.
So what made you choose to attend Spelman College?
Well, actually, it was a process of elimination. I had a scholarship offers to Fisk, Hampton, Talladega, and Spelman. And Fisk was my first choice because in the 1950s and 60s, Fisk had a highly renowned music department. However, I had a cousin who was engaged to a young medical student at Meharry. And unfortunately, he came out to the farm and he talked to my parents. And he said, she's just too young, she's 16 years old, and all the girls at Fisk dress and try and compete for the doctors at Meharry, so that's not a place for her. And my parents listened to his advice. So that eliminated Fisk. As you said, I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up on a farm out in the country. So I didn't really want to trade the country of North Carolina for the country of Alabama. So that eliminated Talladega, although it had a good music department also. I had two high school friends who were at Hampton. So when I went up to visit, unfortunately that Sunday it was very, very humid and my hair frizzed. And I thought, I can't be in an environment that I'm going to have bad hair days every day. Plus, there were already people from my high school there. And I wanted to go someplace that nobody else had been. So Hampton was eliminated. So that left Spelman. My parents had knew of the daughter of a mortician that were friends of theirs who had just graduated from Spelman. So they had her come out and talk to me. And of course she sang Spelman's praises. So off I went on the train to Atlanta that evening of 1960, and I was met the next morning after the overnight ride by Spelman's sister and upperclassmen at the train station.
Oh, wow. Okay. As a former NAASC chapter president and secretary-treasurer of the Northeast region, you have shown to be committed to the Alumnae Association well past your years of graduating Spelman. You've given time and resources to the association, and we definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. What
activities and organizations, if any, were you involved with when you were at Spelman?
I was a member of the Spelman Glee Club of the Atlanta Morehouse Spelman Chorus. That was called the AMS Chorus then. The Morehouse Chapel Choir, the Spelman Student Government Association, the Spelman Spotlight, the newsletter, the Spelman Spotlight staff, and the Spelman Reflections yearbook staff.
Wow. They still have the Spelman Spotlight when I was there. So as the year 2020 is coming to a close, we have heard about the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many others. To show your solidarity, you tweeted, "We grieve for George Floyd and demand accountability and justice for his murder." From what I've read, this time feels reminiscent of the 1960s. In the 50s. So you graduated from Spelman in 1964, correct?
Yes, that's right.
That was a pivotal time in American history.
It was.
Right in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement. In 1964, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. And then in 1965, the Voter Rights Act stopped efforts to keep minorities from voting. Can you describe your time at Spelman during that era?
The 1960, I arrived at Spelman in the midst of the students' civil rights movement. And of course, so it was a time of great change and great gains. Some of the names that we know from the student leaders, John Lewis, Julian Bond, and our own Spelman sister, Bernice Reagan, who was a freedom singer and founded Sweet Honey in the Rock. So in addition to these leaders, though, there was space for foot soldiers. And we were really empowered. We knew that our marches, our demonstrations, our sit-ins, going to jail was making a change in this country. But it was a time of great soul searching. Obviously, the presidents of the college probably supported us secretly, but outwardly, they couldn't. So they sent letters to our parents. All the college presidents in the Atlanta University system sent letters to their respective students and their parents, stating that they weren't in a position to protect us from the peril that was evident with the nonviolent movement and protests. So it was really a soul-searching time for students to decide how and if they could participate. Indeed, some of the parent, for example, one of my friends was a minister, and he drove to Atlanta and told her under no conditions was she to participate in the movement, because if his parishioners found out and their employees found out, they could lose their job. So she was in a position where she could not participate actively. Mm-hmm. But even the students who decided they couldn't participate actively found other ways to support the movement. They made signs that those of us who were marching carried. Some of them helped with the logistics in the background. And then others marched, sat in. These were all peaceful, nonviolent demonstrations, picketed establishments such as Rich's Department Store. And some Spelman sisters went to jail. And indeed, the greatest number of student participants were Spelman women.
Mm. Wow. To switch gears a little bit, but still in that same time frame, you know, my parents, I guess were a little bit later. They came up in the 50s and 60s. So I grew up listening to Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Dizzy Gillespie, early on with my father more so, because he's older. He just passed, but he was in that generation. So I remember making up dance moves with my sister, and we thought we were performers, and that was how we entertained our dad when he played that music. And some of it still reigns to this day. You know, when I hear some of that music, it's because that's what he played. What role did the music and the culture of the 1950s and 60s play on your development as a young woman?
Well, the civil rights movement was a singing movement. So the songs of the movement reminded us of our purpose and goals, and also gave us courage and determination. So when we would sing, "If you miss me at the back of the bus, and you can't find me nowhere, come on up to the front of the bus, I'll be riding up there." So that was a goal of the movement. Or if we sang, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land." Or just like a tree planted by the water, I will not be moved. So these were old spirituals that had new words that fit the movement. So these songs not only emboldened us, but they also connected us to our past, to our ancestors. And then there were lots of protest songs too, in the popular music venue. You know, some of the Marvin Gaye songs that still ring true and is just as valid now as they were then.
Right. So you're a classically trained pianist who's respected in the field of music. I know you've worked with Alexander Pascanov and many other great composers. Why did you choose to study music at Spelman College and pursue an advanced degree in education?
Well, I have always loved music. And my parents were farmers, and so they had a limited income. But even with that, they sacrificed and gave me piano lessons to support my interest in music and my love for music and to nurture that love. So majoring in music was the obvious choice once I got to Spelman. My grandmother, who was born in 1878, was a teacher, and two of my aunts were teachers. So because of their excellent example, I saw teaching as a noble profession. So I was fortunate enough to receive an all-expense fellowship for graduate school at Smith College, so, right after graduation from Spelman. So I went on for an advanced degree. And I'm still learning. I still continue to learn.
Right.
I think that one of the greatest things is being a student.
Right. Now, was that a norm for women especially to go on and pursue advanced degrees?
At Spelman, we were expected to. In the music department, Dr. James, who was the chair, did not even have us do student teaching because it was just kind of understood that you were going to go on to graduate school. So yes, there were very high expectations at Spelman.
Yep.
And most of my classmates went on, some immediately, Harvard Law, and med schools, and others went on for advanced degrees in their fields.
Same. I'm here as a math major. That was pretty much encouraged. You know, we would visit graduate schools and different the math departments at those graduate schools, and it was kind of, the expectation.
Right.
And it was supported. They offered funding for us to do that too. As a piano teacher that's helped shape and mold the lives of many young students, including my 9-year-old daughter, it can be a challenge keeping kids motivated to study and practice. You have given me as a parent encouragement and words of wisdom when I just didn't know how to keep her motivated. Tell me how influential your professors and advisors were at Spelman College.
Well, obviously, the person who has had the most influence on my life is Spelman's treasurer, Dr. Joyce Spence-Johnson, who was my piano teacher. Mm-hmm. And we have maintained, she's still my model of excellence to this day. And we have maintained contact with each other through the years. I always look forward to her great hugs when I go to Atlanta and go back to Spelman. As recently as last week, I wrote her a letter thanking her for that beautiful video that she did for her Spelman daughters, encouraging us. It was close to the beginning of COVID, when the colleges were closing and we were all having to face a different and new reality, a new norm. And she made the video encouraging us. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was just the greatest act of love on her part. So I was just in touch with her just a few weeks ago.
And I believe
but all the professors, Joyce obviously had a tremendous impact because she was my piano teacher, but the teachers at Spelman that I had just were very passionate about their field and very knowledgeable, so they passed that passion on to us. And they really invested their time and their energy in ensuring that we were successful.
So during quarantine, because we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic still, I found myself thinking back on decisions that I've made and how I could have done things better. I've had a lot of time to really reflect and do self-care. I share advice with my daughter to help her to make better decisions and to really teach her not just like educational things, but teach her life lessons. Because life can get so hectic and so busy that we may not always use that time to teach our children those things. So what advice would you give your younger self?
Probably 3 that immediately come to mind. One is to trust your inner voice to make decisions rather than relying on other people's opinions. Another is to be more bold and not afraid to fail, and thus more adventuresome. And the third one was to study organ with Dr. Johnson. I studied piano, but I had a double major in French and education, so there wasn't time in my schedule, but I think I would have let go of one of those minors and study organ instead.
Oh man. All right. So, in the midst of this pandemic, many students and professors are away from their colleges and universities. They're in their homes, doing remote learning now. Parents are having to be hands-on with their children's education as far as printing out assignments, making sure assignments are turned in online, which it's a new normal, What would you say would be your most memorable experience at Spelman College?
Two. One was being selected as a 16-year-old freshman to turn pages for Dr. Johnson at the annual Christmas Carol concert. And the second one was as a senior, I was the college chimist. In those days, in the 1960s, we were required to attend chapel 5 days a week at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so every weekday morning, I would start at 7:45 playing hymns on the chimes in the chapel. And I knew that was getting my sisters awakened and on to chapel on time. So that was a great memory.
Wow. Yeah, one of the things I would say my memorable moment would be going to the homecoming. As an alum, I went to one, and now because everything's canceled, it's like, man, the year I can't go is the year I would want to go.
Exactly.
But they are doing a virtual one this year, so I will be attending that.
Yeah, I think we will too. Homecoming is very, very different. I mean, in our day, way back, then we would walk over to Morris Brown where Morehouse played in those days. And there would be a parade and you'd walk back home and that was it. Maybe there was a dance, but nothing like the tailgating that happens now.
Yeah.
That was quite a production. I took Levi down a couple of years ago and I was just amazed.
A full week of activities,
Yes.
Concerts, Market Friday.
Right, exactly.
Lots of vendors. It's
a lot to miss this year.
Yes, yeah. All right, well, as we wrap up our interview, I want to ask you one final question. What legacy would you like to leave your Spelman sisters and family?
Love and caring, being shown with action is one. And I guess the hard work ethic is another. And support, both financial and of Spelman College and of the National Alumni Association would be, especially for my Spelman sisters, active support, but both with involvement with the local chapter and with the region and the national chapter, National Association.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Ms. Hunter, for giving your time to the Alumni Association and telling your story.
Okay, it was an honor. Thank you.
Out.